go! GNCC Racing!
Welcome to Amsoil GNCC Racing on NBC Sports for the Ironman GNCC Round 13 of America's premier off-road racing championship. I'm Rodney Tomlin, and from Crawfordsville, Indiana, a rather beautiful fall weekend to wrap up the championship. But 2 weeks ago, we were in Summit Bechtel in southern West Virginia, where we got to see a great treat as far as racing is concerned. And kicking things off there, it was 127 once again of Jordan Ashburn getting off to a great start, but it wasn't long before we saw Stu Baylor out front in this one. And of course, with that, he had a mission that he was set out to accomplish that day. The only problem he had was a lot of forces working against him. One of those, Caleb Russell, back there in the number 2 spot. And this young man right here, the 530 of Ben Kelly, in only his second GNCC Pro race. And wasn't about midway through the race, Caleb Russell finds some issues out there. He elects to sit the rest of the day out, but no big deal for him. Still able to wrap up championship number 7. In the meantime, Stu Baylor laid down the law as far as laps were concerned, but breaking the law was the 530 of Ben Kelly, as he wasn't far behind the 514. About midway through this race, things really started to heat up, and by the time we got to the end of the race, things really began to heat up. Baylor followed only seconds by the 530. Call him a rookie, call him what you will, but already looking for his first win in a GNCC race and nearly capturing that only 2 weeks before in his pro racing debut. Kelly was a force to be reckoned with. A mistake by the 514 on the final lap of Stu Baylor gave the 530 of Ben Kelly his historic first win in southern West Virginia, and of course a whole lot of steam to roll into the final round of GNCC Racing for 2019. Caleb Russell, as we said, though, wraps up the championship even with not finishing the race. So Kelly goes on to win the race. Grant Baylor comes up to take second. Toth in third. Ricky Russell fourth. And Trevor Bollinger, well, he rounded out the top 5. Good ride for that young man as we check in at the podium.
Overall, it was a good race. I got a good start, and that's all that really mattered. I was able to just stay up there with Caleb the first half of the race, and once I got by, I put in a charge and caught Stu, and yeah, I just tried to hang his wheel the whole time, and yeah, I got real close coming into that last lap, and just tried to stick with him the whole time, and it was going to be hard to pass him. I tried a few different lines and tried getting close here and there, and then close to the end of that bike only on a downhill, he stalled it, and I was able to squeak by when he was trying to refire the bike. So got a little gift there, but yeah, I worked hard, and I'm just stoked to get my first overall win.
Can you say next big thing in GNCC racing? Well, that's what a lot of folks are muttering around the race course as Ben Kelly in only his second race in a XC1 class taking the overall win. He's going for number 2 here today in the soils of Indiana. As you can see, a little muddy out here on the start, and the 127 of Jordan Ashburn out front. A good start by Andrew DeLong. A little stubble there through the first or second turn, but able to recapture himself. Look at this. Lane Michael out front in this one aboard the 523 early on, so he makes a few passes. We saw a good start out of him by the 3rd or 4th place position, so as they dropped in the woods, he was able to move into the early part of the front of this pack. Good place for that young rider to be, and honestly, a place that I expected him to be at a lot sooner and a lot more consistent, but he's still got some time. Green flag on the XC2 250 Pro class now, and a great jump off the line by the number 10 of Craig DeLong now, riding on that Coastal Husk Varna, and not sure, that may be Jesse Grom back there in that number 2 position. Austin Lee on the Phoenix Racing Honda off to a great start as well. That's 2 good starts for the Phoenix Honda crew. Green flag on the FMF XC3 125 Pro-Am class now, and a host of new names and faces in this one as we see a lot of riders moving up into the FMF XC3 125 Pro-Am class, a class that I expect to see grow quite a bit as the season progresses. A good start by Chase Colville as he gets off to second place, but early in the woods he'll take over the lead in that one as Jordan Ashburn has established the lead now here on lap number 1 in the XC1 Pro class and for the overall. Looks like, looking back a little further, a good start as well to his teammate in Josh Strang aboard the 114. So a lot of the top players out there. We've seen Ben Kelly Toth's out there. Bollinger, as we pointed out, had that illness back in the summer right there before Snowshoe GNCC, has come back from the summer break. Man on a mission, about 5th, 6th place here on lap number 1 as we roll through this first lap of racing. And you might also notice that there is no mention of Thad Duvall or Caleb Russell, as both riders are out for this one. And, of course, that opens the door for a lot of other riders to shine here in the final round. Caleb Russell, with 7 championships under his belt and a few other irons in the fires, has elected not to do so. And I believe some injury issues for Thad Duvall might be keeping him out of the running today as well. But, as we said, the door is wide open for big things to happen, with it being the end of the season, a big explanation point for someone. Who's it going to be? Stick around to find out more.
GNCC on the NBC Sports Network is brought to you by AMSOIL, the first in synthetics. Specialized Turbo e-bikes. It's you, only faster. And by Rocky Mountain ATV MC. Get ready.
And welcome back to GNCC on NBC Sports here from Crawfordsville, Indiana. The season finale at the Ironman and at Ironman Hill. As you can see, this one has been untouched. And we see all of our pro riders going in all different directions. Select the line you will. Some like that far right line. But I guess at this point, with the leaves covering the ground, a lot of riders are considering the left side maybe a little more traversable and being able to see the trail a little easier. We know it's a little longer way around at the top as well, but hey, it's still early in the race as we watch Lane Michael in a solid top 10 position out there. About 7th place, I seen him going by there behind Josh Toth. Might have been 6th for him right there. But nonetheless, beautiful look to this hill, and you see no leaves taken off the hill from the ATVs yesterday. Well, they were rerouted around this one due to the weather. And though you might not be able to tell it through these bike-only sections that we've been able to witness on NBC Sports today, there are certain aspects of the trail that are very, very tough to get through as Grant Baylor makes his way up through near the end of that top 10. I believe he's actually running in the number 10 spot. And here's some of that area that we saw the ATVs having to ride through, and the bike's been through this morning, so they really cleaned a lot of it out in the earlier races. But a lot of rain yesterday made for tough conditions for those four-wheelers and leaving a lot of carnage on the racetrack for these bike guys. So as smooth and as great as the track looks, there are areas of the race course that are sneaking up to bite these riders. So we could and probably will see a lot of changes throughout our top 10 throughout the course of the day. As we see, there is the 739. That is Trevor Bollinger, and Bollinger in a number 5 position here on lap number 1, so a good position for him to start out in here early in the race, and could be a force to be reckoned with as this day progresses, as many of these riders are going to be forces to be reckoned with. And of course, as well, as you can see, some riders having problems with the track, and lap traffic is becoming a little bit of an issue for these lead riders here on lap number 2 already. Jordan Ashburn out front, Ricky Russell still in the number 2 spot as we're seeing some struggling there. There is, it looks like, the 739. He is behind Ben Kelly, the 530, so that's 4th place now for Trevor Bollinger. And here comes the 206 of Josh Toth. As we pointed out, track conditions pretty good throughout most of it, but there are areas, as we see a couple of bikes standing in the mud there by themselves. Here's your leader again down by the creek. It's 127 to Jordan Ashburn, and look at this. It is a surprise line there by the 530 KTM ride of Ben Kelly. He's gotten around the 212 of Ricky Russell, whom I think has dropped back and out of this race quite possibly. But we also see now that Trevor Bollinger using that same line. He is within striking distance of Jordan Ashburn in that 2nd place position. So Ashburn up front in control, all of a sudden under fire and pressure. Well, Ashburn is certainly going to be one to keep an eye on. Again, his first year meshing with this Team Green Kawasaki. He could be a force to be reckoned with in 2020, as Ben Kelly will certainly be that. He is proving that without any doubt, at least through these final 3 rounds of 2019. Kelly out front in this one. As we look back to the number 2 spot, I believe we should be seeing still Jordan Ashburn back there aboard the 127 as he snakes his way through the woods now. on the Babbitt's Online Monster Energy Team Green Kawasaki. No, that is Trevor Bollinger who has taken over the number 2 spot now. So Bollinger's gotten around Jordan Ashburn. Ashburn's still a solid 3. Now, we said that Bollinger was within striking distance after making that little move out there, and he does strike, and he moves into the number 2 spot now. Ben Kelly, though, look at this rider. This is poetry in motion. Already looking like a seasoned veteran pro rider, controlling this race up front with the best in the business hot on his heels. And Trevor Bollinger, a phenomenal ride for this rider. When we saw him at Snowshoe GNCC and he was unable to race, a lot of questions, as to whether the health for him for the rest of the season, what it would mean. But it looks like he went back, was able to go to the drawing board and reinvent himself, and we see what's going on there. So back out on Ironman Hill, the tough side of the hill there, it looks like the far right side as you see your leader heading up there. There's Bollinger also electing this line, and if you're listening in the background, it's a party at Ironman Hill as DJ Judd coming down from Snowshoe to spin some tunes, and there is one of our actually, that is the 231 of Joshua Wyatt out of Saltville, Virginia. He is your Bet A30 plus, I think, points leader overall and class champion. Looks like he may be struggling here on Ironman Hill today as we pick back up with some of these pro riders. And that's Jordan Ashburn still a little further back in that number 3 position, so he continues to lose ground out there, but holding on to a top 3 position here just past the halfway point. And did you notice that line? That's the line that Ben Kelly made the pass on Ashburn with, and there was nobody using that line. It looks like only the bikes and riders using that particular line have been those 2 riders. Now, you scratch your head and say, is that legal? I know that these guys went out, they measured that, the teams looked at that, and they know that they are within that 25-foot distance of the arrows. So a very creative line, and it pays huge dividends here in this race, and I'm sure that's not the only place that these riders have been able to be creative. And on a day like today in this track, the carnage out there, they have to be super creative. A lot of bottlenecks out there that are creating a lot of changes, and I believe we're seeing that right now as the field is shuffling outside the top 5, and these front runners are still continuing to hold some steady pace up there right now, but wow, it is certainly a chore. It is Ben Kelly leading the field. Will he make it 2 in a row? Stick around to find out. History could be written again.
GNCC on the NBC Sports Network is brought to you by AMSOIL, the first in synthetics. Specialized turbo e-bikes. It's you, only faster. And by Rocky Mountain ATV MC. Get ready.
Welcome back to GNCC on NBC Sports for the final lap of the Ironman GNCC in Crawfordsville, Indiana, where the young Ben Kelly going for his 2nd overall win and only his 3rd race as an XC1 Pro Class rider. Back in the number 2 position, the 739 of Trevor Bollinger in that 3rd place position right now. Still kind of up for grabs, if you will, as we're starting to see some changes. Reports are Stu Baylor, Grant Baylor, and a few of the riders are starting to make their way up through the pack. Josh Strang also outside the top 10, and a top 7's making a push right now. We'll see what happens as this race progresses and these leaders head home toward the checkers. Right now, we see Ben Kelly still out front, a rather sustainable and manageable lead over the 739. But did you see that right there? Baylor in that number 3 spot right behind the 127 of Ashburn. We got Stu and Grant Baylor right there close in tow as we are now heading into the final stretch and the final sections of this race. And Ben Kelly holding on to the lead. Looks like he should be able to hang on to this one right down to the very, very end. There is Bollinger making his way through what is a very tricky section of this race course. You can see that teams are down there pointing lines to try to make sure that riders go the right way. Here comes Ashburn, and there is Grant Baylor, and Grant Baylor going down as Ashburn goes down right in front of him. He's over the 127 of, and here comes the 514 now of, that was Stu Baylor making his way back. No, it was Josh Toth, then Stu Baylor in that number 4 position. So the field is flipped once again, and that's how wild and crazy things are, and that's how quickly things can change out here on the trail in GNCC. No changes up front as Ben Kelly will do it. He'll make it win number 2 here as an XC1 Pro Class rider in only his 3rd race. That is 12 wins of 13 races this year in class wins for that young rider. What a phenomenal season for the 530, and I'll tell you folks, he is going to to be one to watch in the future. Caleb Russell knows he's coming. Thad Duvall knows he's coming as well.
Yeah, it's wild. I had a really awesome year in XC2 and was able to go 10 for 10 and get the championship, and decided to move up. And yeah, I got a win at the last race, and coming into this one, I was excited because I really like this track, and I had a really good race here last year, and conditions are really similar. So yeah, I just was looking forward to it, and felt really comfortable out there in the deep ruts and stuff. And yeah, this one was crazy because I got into the lead there maybe third lap or so and had to manage it. So that was a first for me, but I was able to handle it and come away with another win. So it's crazy. I'm stoked.
Good reason to be stoked, no doubt about it. Kelly, Bollinger, Baylor, and Toth. What a wild finish to this one, but a solid ride by your second place position holder, Trevor Bollinger, as we check in with him.
Yeah, like you said, it's a good way to finish it off, especially now we got a long break going into 2020, and you're only as good as your last race. So second best, it's not really what I wanted, but all in all, it was a good day, and congrats to Ben. He was riding good.
Big finish for the season for Trevor Bollinger, and a big finish for Stu Baylor in his last ride on a KTM. He's going to be riding Sherco's next year, and talk about a wild turn of events. Woo!
Well, I've talked about it before a few times, the race lines that form out there. And, this track, it was just so gnarly. A whole different race course was out there, and I was riding the wrong track. I was riding the aero track, and, it's one of those things, like, it's nobody's fault but mine. Like, I didn't see the lines that I should have been on, and, we were giving up a lot of time, and, the rule is in a bottleneck situation, and Rodney can touch on the exact rule, but bottleneck situation, well, this whole track was a bottleneck situation. I mean, there were spots where you knew if you were going to go in there, you're not coming out. And, I had a lot of times where I should have had my eyes open, and I didn't. And then when I looked back and saw Grant on my ass, I was like, all right, it's time to get going. And he passed me like I was sitting still, and I was like, all right, there's one person that, like, hey, I don't care if he beats me. I mean, honestly, he should have beat me today, but obviously that last lap was chaos. But it doesn't bother me if he's leading, and I was glad he kind of revamped me and got me going. I probably would have just stayed riding like I was, and we were able to pull off the podium, so it's solid. But yeah.
Well, madness and mayhem at the end of this one, and afforded the number 514 of Stu Baylor a chance to take over third place. And, of course, as Stu mentioned, a lot of bottlenecks out there developing as the race went on, and you got a little extra freedom out there to make some line choices, and that can sometimes play in your favor, and oftentimes more so than not. But Stu was finally able to put it together for himself, and again, the 127 of Jordan Ashburn out front early. I do have to point out again, Lane Michael, solid start by the 523, as we saw some great runs out of him here toward the end of the season. Be looking for big things out of him, I think, in 2020. So a good start even for Stu Baylor, and that's what we were talking about. I mean, he fell way back and had to work his way all the way back through the pack. But as we rolled through this race, it really looked like Jordan Ashburn may be on track to take his first win on a Team Green Kawasaki, and he would have been in control of it all day long. But as we know, mistakes, they happen, and sometimes just things out of the blue like this right here. A very creative line choice by Ben Kelly, a line that was only used by the first place rider now of Ben Kelly, and then the third place ride was Trevor Bollinger. Those are the only two riders that appeared that actually used that line all day long, but it paid off big for both riders as it put Bollinger in position to get around the 127 and, of course, late chase to the 530. But by the end of the race, there was no one touching that KTM rider. Out of New England, this Ripper really got it done today, and he rode with such authority. And like we said, control and manage a race like this is huge, and to do it as a rookie and basically only as your third race as a XC1 Pro rider is more than impressive. It leaves us to wonder what the future does hold for GNCC Racing. We've seen the best seasons in the past already. Do we have a new best season coming up in 2020? Well, folks, don't miss a thing. Stay tuned to GNCCRacing.com for our schedule and all the great things to come as we roll into a brand new decade. For all of us here at GNCC and Racer TV on NBC Sports, I'm Rodney Tomlin. Have a great offseason, everybody.